All right, welcome to each and every one of you. Thanks for coming to the panel. I'm going to spend 2 minutes just giving you sort of the lay of the land, what I think is happening in tech. My name is Larry McAlister. I was a three-time CPO. I wrote a book called The Power to Transform, and I'm currently the head of digital transformation at Nutanix. So we're in the golden age of HR technology. Generative AI and the future of generative AI is going to have a bigger impact on the world than anything since fire. Every job, every student will be changed by this technology. Remember Moore's law? Every 20 years, we double compute. That is dropping rapidly. So you have to think of your talent strategy first and technology to fuel the talent strategy. You never start with the tool. Starting with the tool is like, remember in the movie Build It and They Will Come? They won't. There has to be a reason, a technology reason to propel your strategy. So the question I got asked most today or this whole week was, there's so many tools, what do I do? You're never gonna catch up. There's so much VC money flying around, we probably invented 5 companies just today. So the goal is, and then I'm gonna turn over to the panel, one, keep an eye on the macro, what's in the market. So Burson does stuff, McKinsey does stuff. Understand the market. Don't be a Luddite. Be an engaged person. You are a transformationalist. You are a person who should care about technology or else going to not take care of you. So the macro is what's going on in the market. 2, the micro is what problem are you most trying to solve, and then dig deep into that technology. So don't feel bad that you don't know every tool. People come to me every day. Do you know this tool? Do you know this tool? There's no way. So macro, micro, and you are a technologist. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to the panel here. Welcome, everyone. So I'll start for an intro. From here, we'll move this way.
All righty. First, thank you for coming. It's 2 o'clock on a Wednesday and at the very end of the conference. So I really appreciate that. Means you guys are hardcore. You're here to learn. We're here to share. I really appreciate that you're here. I'm Brian Little. I'm the Chief People Officer at a company called Altera, which is a spin out from Intel. But what I really want to bring to here today is just to be able to talk about my experiences at not only with the spin out, but being in a high tech environment, a company that to a certain degree is on the forefront of AI, and then how do you make that work inside the company and working with a bunch of engineers who create AI stuff, but yet at the same time, not sure if I really want it for HR. So we'll talk a little bit about that.
That was great, Brian. I'm Alex. I'm the Chief People Officer at Jasper AI. We are a generative AI company that is purpose built for marketers. And kind of similar to Brian, I think I've been trying to think about how we practice what we preach and how we bring a lot of the strategies that we're implementing at our customers in and do a sort of AI first and AI native talent strategy. So hoping that I can share more about that.
Thank you, Alex. My name is Martha Ruiz. I am Global Head of People for Thoughtworks. Thoughtworks is a global technology consulting company. We're in 22 markets. I have had a chance to work with many leadership teams on large scale transformations of our business models. And I know it's painful. There's a good, there's a bad, and there's an ugly. And I want to share that today with you and maybe exchange here some of our learnings, and hopefully it's something that is going to be helpful because there is a better way. I think for all of us, sometimes we stumble on transformation, and I haven't read Larry's book, but I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully it's going to give me an additional, set of insights. So
Terrific. I want to echo Brian. Thank you, everyone, for being here at this tail end of the conference. My name is Julian Clarke. I'm the head of marketing at Wisq. We're an AI agent platform purpose-built for HR, and we've built the world's first AI HR generalist agent. What I'm bringing to the table today is a decade of HR technology experience and some practical wisdom about implementation, practical application of AI in HR today, and some learnings from those customers and from how people are getting value out of using these new advanced technologies.
Right. So the power of this group is not only are they selling this technology, they're also trying to use it internally. So that's a good double-edged sword to get both views. So we'll start with you, Julian. HR has traditionally been looked at and been mired in, administrative activities. What advice do you have to say, how do we get strategic and how do we think about AI in a way to get there?
Thank you. I think AI lets us ask this new question, which is, what does HR now have the freedom to do and focus on when we're no longer buried under this mountain of administrative overload? And when you start thinking about the practical day-to-day realities of a lot of, to probably too many HR pros' daily lives, they're sitting in a shared email inbox or a ticketing system, just answering countless questions, putting out what feels like endless fires. And a lot of that repetitive work can be automated a great deal. And what that allows HR to think about and do is up level the members of their team to focus on the most strategically important work to the business. There's so much that doesn't get prioritized by HR teams because the resources get dragged down into this mundane, repetitive stuff. Um, and I think what's really interesting about this is it's going to be incumbent on HR to introduce these practical applications of AI at their company uh, alongside the CIO. I think many are making the assumption that IT is going to lead the charge on this. And what I would, my advice, I guess, since you asked for it, is I wouldn't wait for IT to make the decision for you. I would think about how each function within your company, including your own, is going to need to use AI for its own purposes and gain huge benefits out of doing that, while not ignoring the human element of it and actually using the technology to enhance that part of work. We just saw, I think just a few weeks ago, the CEO of NVIDIA, Jensen Huang, say IT is going to become the HR for AI agents. And I don't think we should let that happen. I think HR should really be taking the lead on this sort of work.
I mean, the problem for my friends in IT, the problem that they have is they turn on the tool and they're done. It's up to us to enable the workforce to understand what it means and how to use it. So I think you're spot on. Alex. Oh,
Yeah.
you want to jump in? Go ahead.
No, I can jump in. I think that that's so right, because I think you can't really implement AI at sort of the platform level the way you can so many other technologies of the past. So you have to, in that sense, really look at the team structures, the business work, like what needs to get done. And then you have to find the right tooling to be able to enable that. And that's something I think we have a very different skill set to do, because we've been looking at those organizational structures and thinking through what teams need to look like. And this is just another tool in that, like, that really designed from the ground up.
HR is going to need to answer some pretty important questions like who's going to manage these agents and how do we want them to engage with our employees and our customers, and how do we responsibly deploy them across the company? And I think without HR leading that conversation, we're totally missing it.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
So I think this is really an outstanding opportunity, because I think the HR, the people function, has been talking really now for decades about becoming strategic, right? And with the tools now, more than ever, we're able to take some of that work that is more transactional and operational and give it to somebody, give it to the AI agent for them to solve. And there's very effective AI agents right now, and some of them are being developed. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of vendors. Just even, as you go here and through the expo and get familiar with a lot of them, there's a lot of amazing ideas, right? And I'm sure some of them are going to do an outstanding. They're going to rise to to the top. And but the possibilities for the people function are outstanding, and it's really incumbent on the HR organization to let go of maybe what for a lot of people feels like their kind of their security, the skills that gave them security. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying if transformation scares people, just use the word automation, right? That's an easier one for people to get their head around. Okay, back to Jasper. So you sell to customers and you sell to your employees. So what advice do you have for both?
Like where to get started. So we use kind of a framework, and I've used it internally. We talked a little bit about how you want to identify sort of at the team level, at the process level, where to sort of begin to pilot and begin to experiment. And I think what we use is this framework. We look, one, you have to find a team that really adds value to the business. It's not fun to pilot things and teams that people don't really care about. Two, you want to look at a challenge that they have. Are they resource constrained? Do they have crazy ambitious outcomes that they're trying to achieve? And then three, you want to look and see in their actual day-to-day work how much of their ability to operate is really constrained by some mechanical set of activities. And so I think it's always really interesting to me the teams internally that have really adopted and embraced this technology, or some of the teams that you might most be surprised by. So, for example, our brand and creative team, I think, has really taken on the mission of, and I don't know if automation is less scary than transformation. I think our brand and creative team has really taken on the taken on the augmentation of their team. Because one, they're marketing to marketers, so the CMO is a really hard customer, and we care a lot about the quality of the work. Two, they don't have very many people on the team. We're a Series A startup. They have to think about all the disciplines and all the craft across the sort of domain. And they're looking for ways to actually accelerate the work that they're trying to do. And then three, I think, most brand and creative people will tell you that a lot of their time is the less glamorous task of reminding people to use their style guide and their visual guidelines and the colors that are approved. And so for that team, the ability to really get to adopt and play with new technology, it's really transformed the output and the outcomes of the team in a way that I think we've been able to hold up for the rest of the company to say, hey, if they're not scared of this, like you shouldn't be either.
Anyone else want to jump? Okay, Brian. At Altera, we have cutting edge technology, right? You're at the edge of it. So how do we make sure, what advice do you have to make sure that HR is not just reacting to technology, but driving innovation and driving transformation?
Well, there's a couple things. One, I want to talk about something. I call it the Becky syndrome. And the Becky syndrome is that everybody has a Becky in an organization. Becky's nice. Becky's smart. Becky's responsive. You can send Becky an email in the middle of the night and Becky responds back. And everybody loves Becky. There's a human capability piece that we make connections with people that they're worried about it being lost. It's different with your customers, but when you're dealing with your employees, they're worried about this connection. One of the things that we have to be able to understand, help them understand, you can make those connections. You can still have this great feeling and everything else because Becky's going to be able to do some other really cool work that you're going to see experience later. But we have to work people through that so that they don't fight it so much. Because today, one of the challenges, even like in Altera, and again, we have a lot of people to create AI stuff, right? Their visual of that is inside the company. It's like going into, name your favorite giant big box store that has self-service. And you're standing there in your line and you're saying, you know what, this could be better. This is taking forever to do. And it's not a great experience. And some people would much rather go see that store's version of Becky versus going to self-service. We're fighting that a little bit with on the AI side because the experience isn't, because you got a lot of technology people, IT folks who don't really care that much about the experience. They're just designing it. They're just designing it and putting it in there. And even on the HR side, we're not putting it all together from end to end. What do we want that experience to be? What do we want people to feel when they're interacting with that? For example, at Wisq, they're trying to create a persona. So when you talk to it, it doesn't sound like just sort of some, drone that's coming back to you. Capturing what human beings really need in a new way of taking all this information that's power and then helping people be able to perform better. But if you do it like it's a slide rule, it's never going to really take off the way it should. And then getting senior management to really back that. I'm pretty lucky. My boss used to be a CHRO at one point in time, but she's a star engineer. And a great part about it, she gets it. She knows it's going to be clunky. She knows that the first day you roll out something is going to be not perfect. You need to make sure that you insulate your senior teams, your senior leaders.
I mean, I think the phrase that I always use is human-centric, tech-powered, right? Starting with the human experience first and then making sure the technology hits that. Martha?
Yes.
So you've done transformations in like media companies and tech companies. So what do you see as something to look out for and what really works?
So this is a very interesting question. The first thing I'll say is transformations will test you professionally, but also personally. The amount of work, sometimes the hours, sometimes if you work in a global organization, the amount of stress, right? So it really tests you professionally, personally. But in reflecting about this, there's probably two things that I want to highlight. The first one is um, Brian alluded to this, which is a top-down alignment. And I cannot tell you how many times I have worked with teams where maybe the CEO had a very clear vision of what the transformation needed to look like in the business model, in the operating model, in revenue streams and whatnot. But his or her direct reports were not fully aligned and bought in. And that is so critical. And I cannot overemphasize how important this is and how much sometimes people think that it's there when in fact it's not. So interrogating that and making sure that there's alignment in the senior team, because then, that's the core of leadership effectiveness, right? How you cascade a message and then how it trickles down the organization. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect that actually in Thoughtworks we've been able to turn around, but in the beginning it was not, we had to kind of course correct. It's the bottoms up. Like, how do you bring minds and hearts along? So for instance, what we did is similar to ERGs, we have communities of practice. So they're not around a race or ethnicity or identity group, they're around skills. So we have people that do QA and people that are developers and people that are business analysts. And we ask them, how do you think AI is going to impact you? What are some tools out there that you're interested? Go and explore them and then come and present back. So this was a way for us to engage them. Um, and of course, we also have done a lot of work from leadership down in what I call the burning frog, right? So like helping the boiling frog, right? Thank you. Helping our organization understand the sense of urgency. So that because sometimes the reality is people may not see that. They hear the quarterly report, they hear, your financial statement, and of course you want to. A lot of times you celebrate successes, but at the same time, the reality of the business has got to be something that you are constantly delivering to your team, so that they are better informed and they have a better ability to determine what are the kinds of skills that now I need to go and develop. So, this kind of bottoms up approach, engaging hearts and minds is super important.
Yeah. So I have a little story around how do you get the business involved. When I first became a learning development director, I just started running and building trainings, running. And we had a head of HR who was like Yoda. He would call me in for one sentence meetings. So he calls me in and he says, "You're running so fast, you're going to get to the finish line and no one's going to be there to clap for you." End of meeting. It stuck to me for 30 years. So what I write in the book and what I think really helps is ever since then, as soon as I start in a company where we're going to do transformation, I create a business advisory group with like 10 or 12 global VPs who are seasoned, credible, and skeptical. So suddenly you're running everything by them before you go anywhere else. And suddenly you have 12 champions and you have 12 mouthpieces and you have 12 teams who are willing to try it. And then when I go into the executive meeting with my ask for dollars, there's 12 VPs who already approved it. And that's how you get $1 million in 30 minutes, I write in the book. So business advisory group in any transformation or any enterprise-wide change is essential. Okay, so I have a popcorn question for all four of you to answer. Are we the problem? Is HR the problem with moving digital transformation? Are we, as an industry, too risk averse? Is it our fault? Martha, I'll start with you.
Yes, I'm very passionate about this question. Of course not. We're not. We're the solution. I think there's HR and there's HR, right? There's part of the function, and I think there was an article in Harvard Business Review years ago about the two HRs. Like, there's a transactional, operational. People need to get hired. They need to, in some countries, have a contract. They need to get on payroll. They need to, right? So there's a lot of operational side of HR, which with AI, what I see is a huge opportunity to rationalize, standardize, and just kind of get that off of our plates as much as possible in the right way. But then there's the other HR, the HR that is strategic, that is knows the business and knows the business cold, and we know our industry trends, and revenue, and how the competitive landscape is changing. And I think that's what we aspire. I think there's some companies that have this as a recipe. They do a nice job. Others don't. But I will say that the proof that we're not the problem but the solution is today. Microsoft announced that Kathleen Hogan, Chief People Officer of Microsoft, transitions to Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer. So when you read the Satya's announcement, it's because they need somebody to actually understand the organization and drive it through this shift that is AI, and all the changes that it's going to bring to the workplace, to how we go to market. So to me, that's like the proof is in the pudding.
You're like a lawyer showing up with evidence. Alex?
Well, I don't know if I think we're the problem, but I don't know if I agree that we're the solution right now. Like, I guess I think there's a lot of earnestness right now around this bottoms up experimentation, and let's help people get comfortable with tools, and let's help them find sort of individual use cases. And to me, comfort is, and maybe it's like the new happiness. It's not, I don't think, what gets us that seat at the table that you're talking about for strategic HR. And, it was interesting. I went to this client event a month ago, and a lot of the CMOs were saying, like, it's great that everyone has all this efficiency, but where does that go? Like, are they going to Target with that extra time, or am I getting that extra time? And it's so funny because I'm not there as like the HR person, right? But I'm like, oh gosh, how many times have I had that conversation? Like, what are people doing with their time and how much of it is going back? And so I think that bottoms up experimentation is important, but I think a lot of people leaders are missing the opportunity to take that deep understanding of the business and really like personalize and sort of re-envision how work is getting done that meets the same needs that the business is still trying to achieve, or expands the potential of what their companies could do, because now they have limitless intelligence and resources and capabilities at their disposal.
We know what they're doing with their time. They're on TikTok all day. Right.
One of my previous companies, a CPO at, I had a chance to work on a data analytics project that I created. It saved the company $100 million, and then also I was able to generate more revenue because we altered how we found 10 extras in the organization and make sure that they got all the resources and tools, and that group generated over $1 billion in revenue. So once you kind of get to that type of thing, people let you do pretty much whatever you think you need to do. And I think what we need to make sure that we're clear about, it's great that we're, like, to your point, like, those experiments and all that are great, but it does need to translate to real money somewhere, whether it's cost savings or earnings, but it does have to translate. And I only really pick projects where I can do that. So if I have projects that come up from an AI perspective that they're just really nice to have and it sound pretty cool and it's nice, but it doesn't really work. So I have to make sure that it's something I can link all the way through to where I can show either cost savings or cost improvement, and not just HR cost savings, because honestly, people don't care about HR cost savings all that much. So if I save 3 heads in Malaysia, they don't care. But if I can improve the business in such a way that I got either a quarter point or a half point in terms of productivity, and that turns out to real money, that's what people really want to know.
No, 100%. Like fixing the business for sure. What's your opinion?
Is HR the problem? No,
Okay.
but it can be.
Okay.
I think watching a lot of CHROs operate over the last 10 years, a lot of HR teams drive for consensus. They have this sort of innate desire to make sure everyone's happy. And some of the most gifted CHROs I've ever seen have this just magical ability to get people to agree and align and get consensus. When you're talking about large scale transformation and like fundamentally changing the way that you do your work and the way that your organization collaborates, I think that takes some alignment, but it also takes some tough decisions to be made and some sort of like clarity about what it is we're trying to do, and grabbing the reins and saying like, this is a choice that we're going to make and we're going to do this. And sometimes that doesn't mean you get consensus or happiness from everybody on the team.
Okay, great. So there's our little halftime popcorn show. All right, so I'm going to go to you for a question just for you. So we've seen AI teammates be successful in other parts of the organization, like legal and service, IT. What do we have to do to make it indispensable in the HR front?
That's a good question. Building AI for HR is really fascinating because there are a lot of domain-specific concerns that HR rightfully has. They want to balance trust and security and sort of the human connection that a couple of you spoke about earlier. You want, when you're implementing AI in your company, for those tools to enhance the human connection and the human part of work rather than replace it or sort of be in opposition to it. So what I've seen a lot of teams run into when they're experimenting with generative AI and with agents is that a lot of the sort of general purpose and frontier models out there are not as smart about HR as you would expect them to be. And when we're talking about things that affect the lives of employees that really, change their well-being and their livelihood, getting those things right is really, really important. And giving them a great level of service and a good experience is really meaningful. So 2 things to be sort of considering as you're implementing AI is to look for solutions that are fine-tuned to the needs of an enterprise HR team or an HR team in general. And really broadly, as you think about the way that HR should be guiding the rest of the organization on how to leverage AI as a set of capabilities and functions in each team and department, finding those vertically oriented AI solutions for each team is going to be a really important way that HR sort of drives the way organizations design themselves and think about talent and think about augmenting their teams. And I think that it's just, there's a moment right now that HR has to sort of seize that opportunity.
So what I was sort of shocked today as I was going through the talking to the vendors in the hall over there is many of them are founders, and many of them said, I've never been in HR. I'm not an HR person. So the founders of these HR tech companies don't know anything about HR. They just spot a market opportunity and try to fill it. and they use their customers to fill in the blanks. So we have a bigger role. So before I ask Alex a experimentation question, how many people in the audience by raise of hands are at least experimenting with AI in HR? Oh, good. Okay, hands down. And then how many would say they're like in the middle of a digital transformation? Okay, more than I expect. All right, thank you. So we're going to have Alex talk about that. So a lot of people doing experimentations. Sometimes they work, sometimes they work. I want your view on experimentations, and then what's better.
Well, I think experimentation is really important, but I think like you've probably heard every single one of us talk about the business goals, the tops down alignment, the understanding of what problem you're trying to solve. And I think experimentation will only ever get you so far towards really achieving the things that matter. And I think you end up kind of in pilot purgatory if you don't really think through how you redesign like in a truly outcomes oriented way. And so for me, what's been really fun, I just hit, sort of 18 months of the company, was doing our annual planning with sort of the outcome of we want to be an AI native organization. So how do we actually start to design the topography of our organization around the AI capabilities that are out there, many of which we've hacked together, I'm sorry to tell you, because we're still a Series A company. But how do we actually start to think about how work gets done differently? And not just how work gets done differently, but the difference in what work we can do. So how do we actually build our organization to achieve a set of outcomes that we didn't think were possible with the number of people that we had, but we now know that we have those capabilities and we can actually set goals at the company level and then design our teams and our organizations and the interface between different teams. And it's been like one of the most fun sort of organizational design conversations I've gotten to have. And I feel like I've done every business planning conversation, looking at people's roles and responsibilities and moving the boxes around and then telling them they can have half as many heads. And actually, can you stack rank them? And I probably won't open those till Q4. And now I'm actually getting to say, okay, you want to get these things done? Like, let's talk about the way that we actually take the people you have, the skill sets you don't have, which of those skill sets need to be brought into this organization versus where can we actually free existing people up to do those things, and to get to actually re-envision and reimagine from a like first principles standpoint. That's been to me much more durable than some of the like initial experimentation and just kind of empowering people to learn and play around.
How many people here are running like talent acquisition? Talent acquisition? Anyone running talent acquisition? Okay, so do you believe, if I make this statement, that with there's job description automation, there's matching automation, there's assessing automation, there's scheduling automation? Why do we need schedulers and sourcers? How can you pay for that? Can you pay for all those technologies by reducing headcount? And I say yes, but nobody wants to say it out loud. The second you start talking about replacing people with tools, it freaks them out. So that's something we're gonna have to think about how we start approaching it. I'm thinking workforce planning used to be build, buy, or borrow. I think the fourth element, or automate. That's literally workforce planning of the future.
Build, buy, borrow, bought, or bounce. We use the 5 Bs. You were saying something. So I think to your point about the fear and the concern, I think the same happened with other jobs 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? On TV, when people did broadcast, they were afraid of network. The reality is jobs change and they change all the time. So people have to be keeping up with their skills and right, their certifications, like whatever. And but the need for critical thinking and the need for that adapting the people agenda to the specific needs of the business, to where the business is in their in the cycle, right? Are they growing, contracting? That is still going to be necessary. So I think it makes for more interesting jobs for all of us. Challenges that are closer to how the business operates, less transactional work. So what's not to like about that? I think that's very exciting. But for sure, that means changes that are very personal for people in our organizations, right? So managing through that, bringing them along in the journey, to me, is one of the key things. But again, it's helping us fulfill that promise of strategic partnership.
Yeah, I do think it's going to be, to your point, a big shift, probably faster than any of us are going to imagine. I think this is a little bit different than some of the other things that have happened. Um, Today, if you go to school, let's say you want to be a software engineer and you're going to go to some really fancy school like Caltech, it's going to cost you a ton of money for that to happen. A lot of time and a lot of money. And AI can do what any first, second, or third year engineer can do for the most part. Now, as a company, you still want engineers. You don't want to, but are you going to hire the same amount? Probably not, because you're going to make that call. Because if you don't do it, your competitors will. You're going to have, that's just a cold reality of where we are. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we understand as HR partners and people leaders, how do we have a place that's still vibrant? People still have careers, but it won't be doing the same thing they're doing today. And the faster we embrace that, the more quickly we can help retrain people, help them be able to do more of the critical thinking work, and sometimes just move on to go do something else. Because not everybody's going to be able to make that transition. But the better we get at workforce planning, the faster we can come up with that. And AI is going to help us get there faster. And it's going to be a little bit of a challenge.
I also think it's actually really hard to anticipate, and that's hard for us because we like to be able to plan and train, but it's hard to anticipate how work is going to change until you go through that journey. And so we have these conversations a lot at, company all hands. And one of the analogies that I like to use is the principle of induced demand. So more roads equals more traffic. And the thesis is that when you build more roads, you're going to have less traffic because now people have two ways to get up to a place instead of one. But actually, building a new road changes people's behaviors. There are individuals at home who weren't planning to drive anywhere, who then find out that there's a new road, think there'll be less traffic, and they head out. And so it's really impossible, I think, for us to anticipate the ways that behavior is going to change and the work that will need to get done until we actually go through that process of redesigning and re-envisioning and reimagining. And so far, I think if you bring employees along on that opportunity and you empower them to do it, like my TA team is so thrilled, I think, by the ways in which we are enabling them to do what they consider the more interesting parts of their job. And they're discovering new things that I wouldn't even have come up with. And so that's the bringing along moment. And I don't know if any of us can really anticipate it well enough to train people any other way.
Yeah, I think doing what all three of you are describing is really important, and culturally, I think requires two really important characteristics about the HR team and about the organization. One is how ready and willing is your company to change the way they work and try new ways of working and being open to the things changing quickly in those regards. And the second is how fast can all the individuals on your team learn those new skills that, as their role changes, will be more relevant than they were in the past, or entirely new that they weren't part of their job in the past.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about future work of being like coming back to the office. The real future of work is how your job's going to be radically different in 3 to 5 years. I think that's the work we should be focused on. And if you have people, I'll come right back to you. If you have people in your company who are manually typing answers to employees or other people, that is the new manual labor. That's all going to be replaced within a year or two.
Yeah, I just want to share that one of the things that we did, because nobody has a crystal ball, nobody knows exactly how the jobs are going to look like in a year or two, right? We just know that the pace of change is much accelerated. But one of the things that we did is we have one person, actually 1.5. They're fully dedicated, their full-time job. That's the only thing they do is scan the market for the skills that are going to be the future skills, and adapt and refresh our competency model constantly. And we're a tech company, so could be that Java is no longer the language. That's the other language. There's different codings, right? Languages. There's the way you do QA over your code evolves and is different. So the only thing they do is look for what are the trends. And one of the things that we also do is this tech radar, where we look at all the technology that's out there and we see which one is emerging that we recommend other companies should try, which one is maybe it's like wait and kind of hold, or which one you have to get on the bandwagon because we can see that it's going to be like a driving force. But just that, like updating our articulation of the skills is something that we rely on a lot, because then it gives people a sense of, okay, and we always name skills that we still don't have. So we keep naming skills that we know, and then we link them to some of the projects. We're a professional services company, so our employees go around and then they engage with clients in different projects. And based on the project, we say, well, these are the likely skills that we see are emerging in the market, and then we offer learning and development and training, but it's always slower than what we want it to be. And I think that's just part of it's always going to be easier sometimes to hire from the outside, which then brings another kind of paradox because you want to be with that workplace that grows people, right? That provides avenues for growth. So always balancing the learning offerings that you have, so that your people don't feel like you're always going to the outside market to hire, and it's a balance.
Right. Okay, this is for you, Brian. A question for you. You've done transformations in the past. What's something that was unexpected or surprised you that you learned that you think would be a pearl of wisdom for all of us?
I think a couple things. One is every transformation is unique. None of them are alike, and you have to pull from every skill that and experience you've ever had in your lifetime, for the most part. Um, Even learning from others and the transformation they had, you just can't get there by some sort of code or anything like that. But having the confidence that I've done enough things and the teams that I surround myself with have done enough things that I'm pretty sure we can overcome pretty much anything as long as we stay connected to the business. As long as we're clear about where the business is going, I know we can get our teams there. I know we can make that work. Um, and I think building that confidence and then making sure we stay ahead of the game a little further. Like for example, like the last 2 years, I spent time teaching people work on HR, workforce analytics. So I had an analytics person on my team certify all the staff, and 2/3 of them wound up getting this certification so that they could become more confident in really being able to help the business. We're going to do the same thing with AI. I'm going to help them learn more about AI, help them understand kind of get in it, play with it, mess around with it. Don't be afraid of it and start to use that and make that happen. Because in a transformation, you don't 100% know what's going to be out there. Giving people the skills, the tools, and the strategies to manage through it, to me, works better than maybe just a real specific roadmap because you don't really know all the time what's in front of you.
Right. So we have a couple questions, but the last one to you, Martha. If an HR person came up to you and said, I really want to get on this train, I really want to get into digital transformation, what's the first thing I should do? What advice would you give them?
Oh, yeah, yeah, well, I just get one. Okay. I would say organizational adaptability. And you see that through the ability of your workforce to understand the need for change, the why, the trends in the market. You do that by offering learning and development that is guiding them towards that. So it's empowering them in their own skill set. So this learning agility, the concept of um, knowing how to learn, being a good learner, the growth mindset, right? The understanding that it's incumbent on all of us, in any company to grow your skills so that you continue to be relevant. And we're going to give you the tools, but it's incumbent on you to use that. So that it's one of the ways of getting to organizational adaptability, but in essence, that's really what I believe makes future ready organizations.
Great. Growth mindset. Okay. We have 3 questions here. I'll read them and whoever feels they want to answer them. So the first one, I can answer this one. How many people have a strategic goal at the company level for AI? And how did HR influence that conversation? HR has a huge advantage to lead with already existing tools. So that's why I was hired literally into Nutanix. So we have an AI steering committee at the top of the house across every department, including HR. So I'm on the influencing of that team. We're starting with, guess what? Data privacy and data governance and all that. Now we've moved on to looking at all the tools we have in every department, and it's $450 million spend. So how do you rationalize that stack? And then how do we bring in new enterprise-wide technologies? No more little tools all over the place, little fires burning all over the place. And we've built 10 what we think are the most important use cases, like customer sentimentality, and then rank those and start implementing across the enterprise. So that's our strategy. Anyone else?
I actually think I added it to our talent agenda when I first came because I think for a lot of companies, what you'll find is that you want to kind of be keeping up with the market pressures to be adopting AI, but then there's some like burden of like, oh, but we don't really have time to actually do it, or we will give everyone licenses to play around with things, but we don't have time to do the work. And even at an AI company when I first came, everyone was sort of like, well, we have to help everybody else adopt AI, and it was such a like eat your own dog food moment of, well, don't you think we should figure out how we do it ourselves, and maybe we'll bring learnings to our customers, maybe they'll bring learnings to us. And so I feel like it's been my quest, and really honestly with somewhat of an ulterior motive around we don't have, the same things to offer employees as really large organizations with really well-structured learning and development programs. But I thought what we could offer employees was the opportunity to learn something that I think will be the most marketable skill, which is how to really redesign their own workflows using AI. And so you can slide in your own ulterior motive and the things you're trying to achieve by helping people feel like it achieves the things they're trying to achieve. And that was very much my approach with this one.
Here's another question. How should we think about digitization and modernization in payroll? I mean, I think it's a deal, DEL, aren't they payroll? So I would say take the opportunity to go to the expo floor and find some of these vendors, um, and get examples and get a demo.
That might not be the best week for that recommendation, Larry. I'm just gonna tell you. I'll let people Google it.
Does anyone have an experience in payroll digitization?
Yeah, but it's payroll. I think is one of the more complicated things because particularly if you have payrolls in multiple countries, because you're dealing with a lot of regulatory stuff. However, though, there are great vendors that I think are finally coming around in this space,
Mhm.
and I think that's where the help will be. Because I do think there's a lot of promise coming. Now, I don't think it's as easy as everybody says it is, because anybody who's ever run payroll knows payroll is rough. This is always rough. Now, but I do think there's a lot of promise that's coming here. And I think next year when we come here, we should be able to figure out what worked and what didn't work. Because I think we're still at the very forefront of it right now.
I was going to say we are just going through an RFP for our global payroll, so it's highly complex. A lot of the vendors themselves are testing, exploring, experimenting with AI, so they're also on that edge. And you always want to be on the leading edge, not the bleeding edge. Uh, and I think there's still, and for a lot of AI tools, there's probably an exploratory moment. And I think in 6 months and a year from now, there's going to be like massive adoption. But right now, there's still a lot of like, let me see what's out there, what works for me, my size company. Um, and payroll is one of those things that you never want to get wrong. You never, ever, ever want. So it's highly risky. So I would say compared to all the other things that you can bring AI to improve, you probably want to go a little slower with payroll.
Okay, we're running out of time, so we'll read this. Maybe we'll just get one or two answers quickly. What are some of the key steps an organization can take to prepare their role definition, skills, taxonomy in order to prepare their workforce to adapt? Whoever has that answer gets $1 million.
Well, I just spoke about the role that we have, that's what they do. And now we don't define roles at the role level, but at the skill level. So a role is, in order to excel in your role, to perform well, the combination of skills is going to be always changing. There's going to be probably a technical core of skills, but then how you go about doing the work continues to evolve and change. It's not perfect by any means, but the fact that it's skill based and competency based, it really helps us so that it's something that keeps shifting and it's evolving all the time.
Yeah, and I think taxonomies in general, whether it's in this time with AI or ever, is a hard roll up your sleeves slog. So prepare yourself.
I'd add one thing here, which is that going back to the conversation earlier about HR playing a leadership role in bringing AI to the organization, like have I think gain a clear understanding of what AI tools can and cannot do, what skills are going to be more in demand as a result, and that are not accomplishable by AI, and then adapt from there.
That's a great point. Okay, so we're going to have our pearls of wisdom walk-off comments. So what would you want people to walk out of here and take away from your expertise? We'll start here and just go down the line.
Oh man, I have to go first.
Okay, Brian, you go first, and we'll come back this way.
I would say for me is three things. One is get in, roll around in the mud a little bit, play with the AI because until we actually use it ourselves and get familiar with it, it's kind of hard to just go preach about it if you don't do it. Second, align management. It's so important to get your CEO and their directs on the same page with you because there are always going to be bumps in the road and you need their support and working through there. Third, really manage expectations with employees. I think about just how difficult at times because we have an employee experience group, it's about 100 people, and how helpful they were when we said, by the way, our AI that you're going to start using is really stupid right now. It's like a little baby. You're going to ask it questions and you're going to be frustrated. But if you keep asking its questions, it gets smarter, and by doing that, it's going to become more helpful. And getting them to be champions of that journey, and they would start saying, "Well, I'm going to ask a whole bunch of questions because I want it to be smarter fast," right? And how much they actually moved us along by getting your employees involved, having the support of your leaders, and then for you to be hands-on and get in the dirt a little bit. Those three things will really help.
Yeah, I guess my only pearl is I think change is the only constant, and there is no group that is better equipped to think how to bring people along in change and drive change and understand change than people leaders. So this is sort of our moment in my mind. This is really an opportunity that we can step up and step in a very different way for sort of driving the work we want to do. So just embrace the change and don't be scared of it.
I would say three quick things: top down alignment, buy in, make sure you have that. The bottoms up engagement is so critical. 70% of transformations we know will fail because people don't believe in them. They um, circumvent them. So top down, bottoms up. And then I would say put your mask on first. HR, digital, company, business model transformation is hard. It takes a lot of time, takes a lot of energy, and usually in the people function, I don't want to say usually because I don't want to speak for others, but we may be shoemakers' children, right? Like you help everybody put their vest on and launch them, and then you're like, where's my vest? So taking care of ourselves during a transformation, because it's one of those times professionally when you learn a lot, but it also tests you significantly. So.
For me, I think we're at the beginning of what feels like it could be likely a decades-long shift in the way technology and software works and how we then apply it at work. And unlike in other times, I think there's a real opportunity cost to not getting into it early and, like Brian said, playing in the mud and experimenting with it and finding practical applications for it. So I guess my encouragement would be to embrace new ways of working, find practical ways to adopt AI at your organization, and don't wait to do that because the opportunity costs of waiting are going to be very high.
Okay, great. So there's a question here we don't have time to answer about integrating digital teammates. If you want that question answered, come to your digital teammate expert.
Yeah, find me.
So thank you all for coming. I appreciate all the questions. You are a transformationalist. You are a technologist. Thank you all.